Dorothy Ruth Hoog Stratton was her complete name. She entered the world on February 28, 1960, in a humble neighborhood of Vancouver, on the city's fringe. Her parents relocated to Canada from the Netherlands a year following Dorothy's birth. The Hoog Stratton family then embraced a son, John, and after 7 years, a younger sister, Louise. The Hoog Strattons led a very simple life. Dorothy excelled academically in school. She never aspired to become a celebrity, nor contemplated a glamorous career. During her childhood, all Dorothy yearned for were basic things that her impoverished family couldn't provide. In 1977, as a high school student, Dorothy worked as a waitress at a local fast food joint, Dairy Queen. Sporting blonde hair, a charming face, and an advanced figure for her age, the 17-year-old quickly garnered attention from patrons. Not just young males, but also older, prosperous men were captivated by her beauty. One evening, roughly 30 minutes before the closure of the snack bar where Dorothy was employed, a captivating young man named Paul Snyder walked in. He quickly spotted the young, appealing waitress. Paul made his order, and upon payment, he presented her with a high-denomination bill. Dorothy mentioned she couldn't provide change for such a large amount. Paul grinned and suggested she keep the change, on the condition she'd go on a date with him. Without any delay, the girl consented. At that time, 26-year-old Paul Snyder was quite a familiar figure in Vancouver. His job involved managing and scouting so-called night butterflies for club gigs. He had numerous friends and connections throughout Canada. When Paul first laid eyes on 17-year-old Dorothy, a tall blonde with a radiant white smile and a graceful physique, he instantly recognized her immense potential. Paul took the stunner out on a date to a fancy restaurant, and afterwards, he gifted her a red evening gown, which she later donned for her high school prom. Paul and Dorothy initiated their relationship. Her parents remained unconcerned about their romance and didn't restrict their daughter from seeing a man 9 years her elder. A few months into their relationship, Paul started coaxing the blonde to engage in a daring photo shoot. At first, Dorothy was reluctant, but Paul persisted, asserting that she had excellent prospects in modeling and could earn a substantial income. Finally, she agreed to his suggestion. Paul secured a studio, employed a professional photographer, and arranged for the waitress to participate in a nude-themed photo shoot. Once the photos were completed, he forwarded them to the editorial team of the globally renowned men's magazine, Playboy. Dorothy's pictures created a stir. A Playboy editor invited her to Los Angeles, aware that her parents would disapprove of her working for such a provocative magazine. Paul fabricated Dorothy's mother's signature, claiming she permitted her daughter to ink a deal with the famed magazine. In the summer of 1979, Paul and Dorothy journeyed together from Canada to the United States, landing in Hollywood. By August, Dorothy Stratton had risen to fame as Playboy magazine's Playmate of the Month, and subsequently, she started working as a bunny at the Playboy Club. She admitted to her friends over the phone that her new role was quite overwhelming. Unaccustomed to such limelight, she found it daunting as affluent men were smitten with the model, eager to spend time with her and lavishing her with praises. Paul Snyder was constantly by her side, offering his support. He took on the roles of her manager and chauffeur, organizing photo shoots and negotiating contracts. Dorothy's existence was entirely dominated by this man. To strengthen their bond, Paul proposed marriage. The model was initially unsure about marrying, but ultimately consented, feeling indebted to him. Dorothy realized that without Paul Snyder, she would likely still be a waitress at a snack bar, reliant on tips. Her life would not have taken its fairy tale turn. Dorothy's family cautioned her against marrying Paul, suspecting that he was exploiting the young woman for financial gain. In 1979, the same year, Paul and Dorothy tied the knot in Las Vegas. The wedding was simple, without any lavish festivities. The duo remained industrious post-marriage. Dorothy was involved in filming several movies, where directors acknowledged her not just for her beauty and allure, but also for her acting prowess. As Dorothy's fame and earnings escalated, she used her income to purchase a spacious home in Los Angeles, where she resided with her husband. Paul Snyder was content with his wife's achievements. He boasted to his friends that Dorothy's rising popularity was a collective success. Acting as her manager, he was a constant presence at her shoots and events, overseeing their finances and assets. He also kept a close watch on her diet, clothing choices, alcohol intake at social gatherings, and occasionally guided her on whom to engage with intimately among influential figures to further her career. Speculations arose about Dorothy having a romantic liaison with Hugh Hefner, the chief editor of Playboy magazine. However, Hefner refuted these claims, asserting that Stratton was not a woman of loose morals. As time progressed, the model began to discern that her husband, Paul, was exerting excessive control over her life. She appointed a new professional manager and started excluding her husband from photo shoots, fabricating various pretexts. The gap between the couple widened, and sensing this, Paul's mental state deteriorated. He guarded his wife with insane jealousy, even employing a private detective to monitor her movements. Yet, no incriminating evidence surfaced. Paul began to impose restrictions on his wife's wardrobe, disallowing her from wearing provocative attire, not wanting men who offered no financial gain to their family to admire her. He instigated conflicts, and in moments of rage, even resorted to physical abuse. Dorothy found herself unable to endure her husband's aggressive outbursts and increasingly sought distance from him. Their friends and colleagues observed the mounting troubles in Paul and Dorothy's marriage. Staff at Playboy frequently advised the model to terminate her relationship with her husband. While Dorothy was occupied with photo shoots, Paul resided in their house, utilizing his wife's earnings and languishing in inactivity. One day, he discovered that Dorothy had established a company under her name and was actively investing in it. This move, advised by her manager, was strategically arranged so that in the event of a divorce, Paul Snider would not have any claim over the money. Paul's behavior escalated into creating more scandals, as he found his influence over his wife waning, with her seldom returning home. Snider began to grasp that his control over what he deemed his golden ticket was slipping through his fingers. In the spring of 1980, at a gathering in the Playboy mansion, 20-year-old Dorothy encountered the renowned 40-year-old film director, Peter Bogdanovich, a close associate of Hugh Hefner. The director was captivated by the model and extended an invitation for her to act in his upcoming comedy, They All Laughed. Dorothy accepted the offer to portray the role of a mistress. On March 22nd, Stratton embarked on a solo trip to New York for the filming of the comedy. She misled her husband, claiming that the director had prohibited anyone besides the cast and crew from being on set. She convinced Paul to remain in Los Angeles. In truth, she feared that Paul might create disturbances during the shoot. Furthermore, the blonde requested her manager to filter calls from her overbearing husband. During her time on set in New York, Dorothy found herself deeply enamored with Bogdanovich. A fervent romance blossomed between the actress and the director. Dorothy exuded joy in the company of this new figure in her life, not wanting to forego the opportunity with the sophisticated, affluent, and influential director. Her demeanor towards her husband grew distant and aloof. Dorothy spent 2 months in New York, and throughout this period, Paul Snider was left alone in their large house in Los Angeles. He sometimes brought other women home who were astonished to discover that Paul was being unfaithful to such a stunning spouse, a Playboy model. In April 1980, Dorothy returned to California for the Playboy Awards ceremony. She earned the prestigious title of Playmate of the Year and graced the magazine's cover, gaining a new accolade. As part of her recognition, she received a lavish gift from Playboy, a Jaguar sports car, and a cash award of $200,000. She had developed a close friendship with Hugh Hefner, the chief editor, who harbored great expectations for the rising star. Following the ceremony, Dorothy embarked on a 2-week promotional tour across Canada. On weekends, she flew out for dates with director Peter Bogdanovich. She intended to spend the final days of the tour with her family in Vancouver. Upon learning this, Paul Snider immediately flew to Canada, leveraging his past experience as a nightclub manager and his numerous connections in Vancouver. During Dorothy's brief holiday, Paul coerced her into working in clubs and pocketed all the profits. During this time, a significant altercation erupted between the couple, where Dorothy, in tears, suggested quitting her career to salvage their marriage. She proposed that they both return to her parents and start afresh. Snider, however, rejected this idea. After the tour in Canada, Dorothy returned to New York and continued filming the comedy, They All Laughed. She ignored her husband's calls and further distanced herself from him. One day, Dorothy called Paul herself and asked for more freedom in their relationship. Snider was in depression and very angry with his wife. It is known that at that time, Paul Snider was involved with a young girl who was not yet 18 years old. She had a model-like appearance, and Paul wanted to make her a new Playboy bunny. However, he soon realized that his young lover would never be able to overshadow his wife. In June 1980, on their first wedding anniversary, Paul received a distressing letter from Dorothy. She expressed her desire for a divorce in the letter and declared that she would cease to provide him with financial support. This confirmed Paul's fears. He was now convinced that Dorothy was being unfaithful with the director Peter Bogdanovich. In response, Snyder employed a private investigator to collect evidence of his wife's alleged affair. On one occasion, Paul called Dorothy's manager, threatening to create a disturbance or possibly do something even more drastic. The manager cautioned Dorothy to hire a bodyguard and be cautious of her envious husband, but the model disregarded this advice. As a non-resident alien in America without a green card, Paul faced employment barriers. His financial resources were dwindling, leading him to deplete their joint bank accounts. He liquidated Dorothy's valuable items, including collectibles, jewelry, and the Jaguar sports cars she had been gifted by Playboy. He offloaded these assets at steep discounts, strictly accepting cash transactions. Moreover, Paul started renting out rooms in their expansive home to friends, partly driven by his depression and loneliness. Gradually, he began to contemplate returning to his homeland, Canada. In mid-July, the shooting for They All Laughed wrapped up. Subsequently, Dorothy and Bogdanovich embarked on a 10-day getaway to England. They returned to Los Angeles together on July 30th, with Dorothy moving into the director's mansion located in the upscale Bel Air neighborhood. On the afternoon of July 31st, Paul Snyder borrowed a handgun from an acquaintance. Late that evening, he approached Peter Bogdanovich's residence, armed. Paul concealed himself nearby, resolute in his decision to shoot anyone who approached the mansion's gates. After several hours of waiting and growing impatient, Paul drove to a mountainous area that overlooked nocturnal Los Angeles. He later confided to a friend that during his solitary time in the mountains, he was tormented by harrowing thoughts of taking his own life. Late into the night, Snyder made his way back to their home. A week later, on August 8th, Paul managed to convince Dorothy to meet him at their residence. He harbored hopes of rekindling their relationship, reminiscent of the charm he wielded in the modest diner where they first encountered each other. However, Dorothy who arrived was no longer the naive schoolgirl he once knew. She had transformed into a self-assured woman, no longer swayed by her husband's persuasions. Dorothy revealed to Paul her love for another man and her intention to divorce. Snyder, maintaining his composure, requested that she return in a week to calmly discuss the particulars of their separation. The following day, Paul zealously set out to purchase a firearm. He scoured shops, but his Canadian citizenship deterred sellers from transacting with him. He even asked his private investigator to procure a rifle under the pretext of self-protection and home security, but the detective dissuaded him and declined to assist. On August 11th, Snyder spotted an ad in the newspaper. A hunter was selling his old 12-gauge shotgun. He drove to the San Fernando Valley, intending to inspect and potentially acquire the firearm. Unfortunately, he lost his way, failed to locate the address, and had to return without the shotgun. On August 13th, 2 days later, Paul revisited the same location. This time, he successfully found the seller and purchased the aged shotgun, telling the seller of his plans to go hunting. On August 14th, in anticipation of his meeting with Dorothy, Paul Snyder requested his roommates to vacate the house until evening to ensure uninterrupted privacy for his conversation with his wife. Dorothy's managers and assistants had urged her to let them accompany her to the meeting or to handle the divorce discussions over the phone. However, Dorothy chose to go alone. She carried a substantial amount of money with her, intending to express her gratitude to Paul generously for his past contributions to her life. She aimed for a peaceful separation and hoped to maintain a cordial relationship. Believing the meeting would be brief, she scheduled a photo shoot for later that evening. Dorothy arrived at her home at noon on August 14th to meet with Paul Snyder. He courteously welcomed her inside. Shortly after, her phone rang. It was a safety check call from her manager. They had prearranged that if Dorothy encountered any trouble, she would use a specific code word during the call. She assured the caller that all was well and quickly concluded the conversation. The discussion between Dorothy and Paul continued, but it eventually escalated into a dispute. In a sudden, violent outburst, Paul Snyder produced the shotgun and fatally shot Dorothy in the face. It was reported that following this heinous act, Paul engaged in a necrophilic act with his deceased wife before turning the gun on himself. At 8 p.m., the roommates returned to the house, noticing Stratton's car parked outside. Inside, they found the model's handbag in the living room. Assuming that Paul had made up with his wife and they were together in the bedroom, the roommates retreated to their own room, turned on the TV, and endeavored to be as quiet as possible, not wanting to intrude on the couple's privacy. In the meantime, Dorothy's managers became increasingly anxious as she had ceased responding to their calls. At 11 p.m., they finally managed to contact someone at Paul and Dorothy's residence. The roommates took the call, and after hanging up, they decided to check the master bedroom. There, they stumbled upon a gruesome sight. Both Dorothy and Paul were found dead. Forensic specialists concluded that the 20-year-old Dorothy Stratton had died approximately 1 hour after her arrival at the house. Her 29-year-old husband, Paul Snyder, died about an hour following his wife's death. Hugh Hefner was among the first to be informed of the tragic event. He took it upon himself to contact his friend, Peter Bogdanovich, to relay the devastating news. Upon hearing about Dorothy's death, Bogdanovich was so overwhelmed that he fainted. Following this, he spent an extended period under the influence of sedatives to cope with the shock and grief. The August edition of Playboy magazine had already been dispatched for printing, making it impossible for the editors to change the cover in time. As a result, it featured Dorothy Stratton, who had tragically passed away. However, for the annual Playboy calendar, her image was substituted with that of another model. Hugh Hefner offered his perspective on the tragic incident, stating, "There is a stereotype that a poor girl from a small town makes it to the pages of a magazine, moves to Hollywood, builds a dazzling career, and then dies tragically at the height of her powers. But it's not always the case. Paul Snyder was a sick jerk who realized that his lucky ticket was slipping away, and that's what drove him to commit this awful act." Peter Bogdanovich took charge of organizing and funding Dorothy Stratton's funeral. The loss of his beloved profoundly impacted him. He decided on cremation for her remains, which were then interred in a cemetery in Los Angeles. Following the tragic demise of the model, the film studio chose not to release They All Laughed. Bogdanovich, determined to showcase the work, purchased the film rights using his own finances. The comedy They All Laughed was eventually released in 1981. Despite the efforts, the film did not garner any significant accolades and failed to captivate the audience's interest. This commercial failure led Bogdanovich to lose millions and ultimately resulted in him declaring bankruptcy. Several years after Dorothy Stratton's passing, rumors surfaced about director Peter Bogdanovich secretly meeting her younger sister, Louise Stratton, who was 13 at the time. The Stratton family strongly refuted these claims and legally contested the spread of these rumors. However, in 1988, 8 years later, the 49-year-old Bogdanovich married 20-year-old Louise Stratton. Louise later stated in interviews that their romance began when she was 18. The union of Peter Bogdanovich and Louise Stratton lasted for 13 years, ending in divorce in 2001. Peter never remarried, dedicating his life to his cinematic endeavors. He passed away in 2022 at the age of 82. Louise Stratton, now residing in her hometown of Vancouver, pursues a career as a Canadian actress and producer. Over 4 decades since Dorothy Stratton's murder, her life and story continue to inspire various creative works, including films, books, and songs. A recent tribute to her is seen in the crime drama series Welcome to Chippendales, which chronicles the story of the famed male strip dance group Chippendales, co-founded by Paul Snyder. In this series, Dorothy Stratton is portrayed by Nicola Peltz, who is married into the Beckham family. Alan Huby, accompanied by his college roommate, traveled to Dallas, Texas for the weekend to attend a football match where the University of Oklahoma, their alma mater, faced off against the University of Texas. They secured a premium hotel room nearby. Alan quickly snapped pictures of the lavish suite and shared them across his social media, reveling in displaying his affluent lifestyle. At this moment, he was oblivious to the fact that the police had marked him as missing. At around 9 a.m. on October 13, 2014, a troubling call reached the Duncan City Police Station from a domestic worker. She disclosed that she had discovered all the residents of the home, where she had worked for years, lifeless on the ground. Upon arrival, the police discerned that a heinous act had taken place. The family members' corpses had been decomposing for several days before the housekeeper stumbled upon them. As they kept inquisitive neighbors away, detectives commenced their probe. The precise sequence of events remained a mystery. For For a small community of just 22,000, the occurrence was staggering. Some theorized it could be a failed theft resulting in a gruesome homicide. Curiosity also grew about Alan Huby, the family's eldest son, who was conspicuously absent. Suspicions arose that he might have been abducted, given his unaccounted presence. Today's narrative unfolds in Oklahoma, a state home to roughly 4 million inhabitants. Situated in the south-central part of the United States, Oklahoma boasts a landscape filled with forests and mountains. It's celebrated for its cowboy heritage, the rich history of Native Americans, and breathtaking natural vistas. Nestled to the southwest lies Duncan, a quaint town where the Huby family resided, John and Tinker. Huby exemplified an ideal couple, enjoying a prosperous and satisfying existence in their native town as proprietors of the local news outlet. The Huby lineage had stewardship over the Duncan banner for 3 generations, up until its sale in 1997. Subsequently, in 2013, they acquired the Comanche County Chronicle. Buoyed by a flourishing enterprise, the Hubys led a thriving life. Esteemed within their circle, John and Tinker had 2 offspring, Catherine and Alan. Catherine came into the world on August 21, 1997, showing early signs of intelligence, artistic talent, and diligence. By 17, she shone as a luminary on her high school volleyball squad, her countenance ever radiant with a smile. The year 2014 saw her on the cusp of high school graduation, actively selecting a college for further studies. Her elder sibling, Alan, born on May 8, 1995, was then 18 and embarking on his collegiate journey at the University of Oklahoma, delving into political science studies. While Alan was sociable and extroverted, he starkly contrasted with his sister. Catherine was notably reserved, in sharp contrast to Alan's conspicuousness, vivacious, daring, and indulged. He reveled in enjoyment and radiated vitality. His paramount interest lay in wealth. He had a fondness for shopping and acquiring lavish goods. His leisure activities spanned holidays, with a particular joy in utilizing his parents' funds. Like many affluent individuals, he took pleasure in flaunting his opulent lifestyle on social media, regularly narrating his activities. He ostentatiously displayed luxury brands, costly automobiles, or high-end fashion items. Despite living extravagantly beyond his means, he basked in the notion that others perceived him as affluent and somewhat influential. Curiously, despite his luxury, he showed a preference for simple McDonald's fare over fine dining, zealously indulging in everything from Big Macs to crispy chicken nuggets. He often expressed his fondness for the fast food giant, being a keen explorer. Alan enjoyed sampling this franchise's offerings across various nations and then broadcasting his experiences to his followers. In truth, his daily exploits garnered limited interest. Although he self-identified as a public figure, a cursory review of his posts and pictures revealed his overt narcissism. Alan frivolously squandered his family's painstakingly earned resources. His parents maintained their patience over his reckless spending until he started to overstep boundaries. Over time, what appeared innocuous at first gradually exerted a profound strain on the Huby family's finances. As their business started to falter, the parents grew concerned. The advent of modern technologies was rendering print media increasingly redundant. By then, the digital media sector was expanding with greater vigor, unlike traditional newspaper firms. The public's shift from reading newspapers to following news online was unmistakable. As Alan's extravagant spending escalated, John and Tinker noticed a rapid depletion of their financial resources. Initially, they absorbed the financial strain themselves and reduced their personal expenditures. Yet, realizing this approach was futile, they redirected their focus towards curtailing their children's spending. It emerged that their son's financial indulgence was excessive. Consequently, they faced the tough choice of halting Alan's financial support. They decisively revoked his access to the family's funds. It's crucial to highlight that by the time this decision was enacted, Alan's profligacy had intensified significantly. His compulsion for shopping morphed into a genuine addiction, akin to alcoholism or drug abuse. Incapable of going a day without gratifying his desire for a lavish new acquisition, and now bereft of personal and familial financial support, Alan descended into desperation, seeking to exploit vulnerabilities in those close to him. Tragically, his exploitation extended to his own grandmother, whom he duped into surrendering her credit card details for his extravagances. The first act following his acquisition of his grandmother's credit card details was a trip to Paris, his favorite destination, where he persisted in documenting and flaunting his expensive escapades. When Alan wearied of his extravagance in France, financed by his grandmother, he returned not to a warm, familial greeting, but to the police awaiting him. Alan's father had reached his limit with his son's conduct. He might have overlooked the antics had they solely impacted Alan, but the recent exploit involving pilfered funds from his grandmother crossed a line. Consequently, after Alan squandered over $5,000 of misappropriated money, he faced arrest for a criminal act. Yet Alan's consequences were comparatively mild. Rather than incarceration, he was sentenced to probation, required to make restitution, undergo mandatory substance abuse and alcohol counseling, and participate in cognitive behavioral therapy. He was placed in a deferred sentencing program with a court appearance scheduled for November 2014. Remarkably, this experience did little to alter his behavior. Alan made no effort to reform. The only change was in his mindset. The pampered youth held his parents responsible, blaming them for stripping away his financial resources and his preferred lifestyle. His resentment towards both parents intensified daily. Nonetheless, this familial strife wasn't the sole negative influence in his life. Amidst the financial turmoil, Alan sought assistance from dubious figures to sustain his spending habits. Following his lavish European escapade and the cessation of familial financial support, he found himself deeply indebted to local loan sharks, facing a substantial sum that he had no means to repay. The interest on the debt grew exponentially, exacerbating his predicament. Alan's once comfortable and untroubled existence as a spendthrift was collapsing around him. Confronted with these fiscal challenges, he felt compelled to act. The urge to maintain his extravagant lifestyle and evade the constraints of his current predicament drove him to irrational measures. He devised a scheme aimed at securing a large sum of money to extricate himself from this dire situation, pinpointing life insurance as the avenue through which to achieve this. However, a significant hurdle in Alan's plan was that his parents were still relatively young, vibrant, and in excellent health, making the likelihood of them passing away naturally in the near future slim. Yet, driven by an obsession with frivolous spending, Alan was prepared to accelerate his parents' and potentially his sister's demise to access his inheritance sooner. This drastic thought process stemmed from a belief that his family had wronged him, and eliminating them appeared to him as the sole solution to rectify his situation. By doing so, he envisioned a swift resolution to his financial woes and the freedom to spend without accountability in the future. In October of 2014, it was an ordinary Thursday. The entire Huby family was present except for John, the patriarch, who had momentarily stepped out for errands. This circumstance perfectly aligned with his son Alan's intentions. He accessed the family vehicle, retrieved his father's 9mm handgun, and then resecured the vehicle. Holding the gun, Alan experienced a sense of command over his destiny for the first time since his monetary support had been revoked, feeling like he was in charge of his fate. Upon re-entry into the house, he encountered his initial target at the room's opposite end, his mother, Tinker, seated at the living room's dining table. Unaware of Alan's approach from behind, she didn't perceive the moment he icily executed the trigger pull. After the initial shot, Tinker collapsed, yet remained alive, prompting Alan to discharge a second round. His 17-year-old sister was outside, attending to her car, but hurried indoors upon hearing the disturbance to investigate. As Catherine rounded the corner, she was confronted by her brother, gun aimed at her. Before she could grasp the situation, Alan discharged his third round, and she dropped lifeless. Alan then spent over an hour beside his mother and sister's motionless forms, awaiting his father's return. Upon the father's arrival, he faced his son's brutal treachery, leading to a lethal injury. Alan observed his father collapse, then fired once more, ensuring the demise of the family members who had restricted his expenditures. In that moment, his route to financial autonomy became unobstructed. No longer would anyone impose their will upon him. Following the sealing of his family's fate, Alan eliminated the hard drive from the household security apparatus and vanished with the murder weapon, leaving behind the remnants of what was once a cherished family unit. Concerns arose among John Huby's colleagues when he failed to appear for work on Friday. His co-workers mentioned he was scheduled to report on the weekly school football game, an event he never missed, yet calls to his home went unanswered. The anxiety among their colleagues escalated when both Huby parents didn't show up at the newspaper office post-weekend without informing anyone. On the morning of Monday, October 13th, at about 9 a.m., a distressing call reached the Duncan City Police Department. A panicked housekeeper reported a horrific discovery in her employer's home. Upon entry, she encountered the lifeless bodies of 3 Huby family members: John, aged 50, Tinker, aged 48, and their 17-year-old daughter, Catherine, all showing no signs of life with a vacant stare. Alan, the eldest sibling, was conspicuously absent. The housekeeper feared that the young man might have been abducted following the massacre of his family. Meanwhile, having eliminated his family members and thus paving his path to the inheritance, Alan traveled to Dallas, Texas, with a friend, aiming to catch a football game as a means to fabricate an alibi. He opted for the most luxurious accommodation at a trendy hotel and began sharing pictures of his lavish surroundings on social media immediately after arrival. Alan believed documenting his indulgence was a strategic move to shield himself from suspicions related to the calamity that struck his family. He portrayed himself as enjoying a holiday with friends, ostensibly oblivious to the tragedy that befell his parents. Throughout the weekend, Alan immersed himself in enjoyment with his friends. He uploaded numerous photographs from gatherings to his social media, oblivious to the grim scene of his sister and parents in their home, surrounded by dried blood. Those who accompanied him at these social events remarked on his cheerful demeanor. He was seen laughing and thoroughly enjoying himself, with no indication of having committed a heinous act just days prior. Reveling in his liberty, the young man seemed to overlook that he was under probation for prior offenses of stealing money from his grandmother. His departure from Oklahoma was in itself a breach of his probation terms, rendering his trip to Dallas as an alibi ineffective due to the significant time gap between his hotel check-in and the tragic events at his family's residence. In the meantime, the Duncan police were diligently examining the Huby residence for any leads. Alan was officially listed as missing. The sophisticated security system at their home was compromised, lacking its backup disk, and with the crucial video evidence missing, piecing together the events became challenging. The priority for the detectives quickly shifted to locating Alan. Fortuitously, this endeavor lasted merely 2 days. Initially, Alan was apprehended for reasons unrelated to his family's demise. His interstate travel had contravened the stipulations of his probation. The investigation expanded to encompass allegations of fraud as well. It emerged that Alan had illicitly obtained an additional credit card in his grandmother's name, accruing charges over $17,000, on top of a $5,000 expenditure for a European vacation. 2 years prior to the devastating event, Alan had already exhibited aggression towards his mother during a financial disagreement. Despite this, Tinker, embodying the forgiving nature of many mothers, pardoned her son's aggressive behavior, attributing it to the tumult of adolescence. The depth of Alan's deceit to support his lavish lifestyle dumbfounded the law enforcement officers, unaware that the situation would deteriorate further with Alan now detained and fully briefed on the fate of his family. This juncture was crucial for the investigators, as Alan's response could shed light on his guilt. His exaggerated display of sorrow, characterized by loud wails and a semblance of overwhelming sorrow, was scrutinized by the officers. They surmised that his distress stemmed not from the loss of his family, but from the forfeiture of financial resources and social standing. The detectives swiftly inferred Alan's culpability in the tragic end of his family members, seeing through his insincere lamentations which only served to deepen their suspicions. His tears were interpreted as a realization that his days of recklessness were numbered. It wasn't long before they secured a confession from him, as Alan recognized the futility of his charade, understanding that continued deception would only prolong his inevitable downfall. Alan's admission that the murder of his parents had been premeditated caught the investigators off guard. He believed he had meticulously covered his tracks to elude capture. In a misguided effort to divert law enforcement, he even left his mobile phone in his dormitory on the university campus on the morning of the tragedy. Yet, his oversight regarding the conditions of his early release rendered his schemes ineffective. With little coercion, Alan unraveled, divulging the entirety of his plot to law enforcement. His ultimate objective was to inherit his family's wealth. He was under a $3,000 debt to loan sharks, and according to him, the dire threats he received from these creditors drove him to desperation. He aimed to elicit sympathy from the police by painting himself as a victim of circumstances. Upon inquiring about the firearm's whereabouts, Alan asserted he had disposed of it in a lake near their residence. Despite thorough searches by divers, the weapon was not found in the lake. Further investigation led to a storage unit leased under his grandmother's name, where the gun and the absent hard drive from the home security system were discovered, furnishing the authorities with compelling evidence. Additionally, blue gloves containing Alan's DNA were located within the unit. This evidence, coupled with Alan's confession and his being held without the possibility of bail, fortified the case for prosecution. The prosecutors deemed Alan a menace to society, highlighting the particularly heinous nature of his offenses against his own family, reinforcing their intent to pursue a rigorous trial. To circumvent facing capital punishment, Alan negotiated a plea bargain, consciously admitting guilt for the murder of his family to secure 3 consecutive life sentences. This resolution was deemed acceptable by the remaining family members. The revelation of Alan as the perpetrator stunned those who knew the Hubys as a kind and esteemed family. The small town of Duncan was particularly shaken, never anticipating such a heinous act from a relative nurtured in an environment of love and affluence. The town was profoundly disturbed by Alan's atrocious deeds. John and Tinker, known for their benevolence and success both professionally and personally, spared no effort in supporting their family and community, often involved in charitable activities. It was unimaginable for anyone that someone so integrated into their loving circle could commit such monstrous acts. Alan's acquaintances, who had great admiration for him and considered him a wonderful friend, were unanimous in their disbelief that his desperation for money could escalate to the murder of his own kin. Now, having shattered the lives of those dearest to him, Alan is isolated in a cell, cut off from any ties to his previous existence. Even with access to a mobile phone, his only updates to share on social media would be the dreariness of his cell and the monotony of prison meals. With no one left to reach out to, he finds himself utterly abandoned. In February 2017, at a high-end hotel in Soho, New York, a crisp $100 bill smoothly slid across the check-in counter. The desk clerk was taken aback by the substantial gratuity offered by a youthful lady who identified herself as Anna Delvey, declaring her intent to reside in the hotel for a full month. At 26, Anna opted for a luxurious room adorned with ceramic art pieces and expansive windows showcasing the vibrant New York streets. The accommodation cost was $400 nightly. In the ensuing weeks, Delvey frequently approached the front desk to request additional services for her room, always leaving sizable tips. She was well-versed in the city's fashionable locales, familiar with the proprietors of these places, and even knew the names of various bartenders and servers. Adorned in high-end designer wear and savoring gourmet meals, Anna's demeanor, however, struck many as unusually discourteous for someone of her apparent affluence and education. She never expressed gratitude, was brusque with the staff, and incessantly hurried them. Despite this, Delvey rapidly gained a reputation as a lavish tipper. The hotel staff vied for the chance to attend to her room, knowing they'd receive no less than $100 for their efforts. She seemed to spend extravagantly, almost as if eager to part with her money. Yet, the seemingly affluent and enigmatic Anna Delvey was far from the persona she portrayed. Anna Vadimovna Sorokina was born on January 23, 1991, in Domodedovo, a city situated south of Moscow in Russia. Her father was a truck driver, and her mother ran a modest store. In 2007, at the age of 16, Anna and her family relocated to Germany. Her father took on the role of managing a transportation firm, which unfortunately went insolvent in 2013, 6 years after their move. Subsequently, he ventured into the heating and cooling industry. During this period, Anna's mother was dedicated to managing the household. Anna attended a Catholic educational institution. Her ex-classmates recall her as being reserved and unassuming, and she encountered difficulties with the German language. In 2010, Sorokina commenced her studies at an arts and design college. Yet, she discontinued her education 3 years later, and in 2013, at the age of 22, she moved to Paris. There, she interned at a fashionable French publication and adopted a new identity, Anna Delvey. She claimed that Delvey was her mother's maiden name, but it was later uncovered that this claim was not based on factual information. In Paris, Anna started frequenting Fashion Week events and various social gatherings. Her parents provided her with financial support to the best of their ability, and she constantly reassured her mother and father that investing in her future was the most beneficial decision. In 2016, Anna relocated to New York and quickly began making appearances at elite social events, where she mingled with affluent individuals and gained recognition in their circles. Her entry into these exclusive gatherings was facilitated through her close association with Oliver Zam, the editor-in-chief of the French magazine where Sorokina had interned. At these events, she introduced herself as Anna Delvey, purportedly a prosperous heiress from Germany. Anna claimed to have a fortune of 60 million euros in Swiss bank accounts. The true nature of her father's profession remained a topic of speculation among many. Some conjectured he was a diplomat, others surmised he owned an oil company, while a few of Anna's contacts believed his business involved dealing in antiques. While in New York, Delvey formed a friendship with the well-known art collector Michael Sufu Huang. He shared with her his ambitions to launch a private art museum. When Michael mentioned his plans to attend an art exhibition in Venice, Italy, Delvey expressed her desire to join him. Michael consented and took care of the expenses for Anna's flight and hotel accommodation, with the understanding that she would reimburse him later. In Venice, Delvey unusually opted to pay for everything in cash, which struck her wealthy companion as peculiar. Upon their return to New York, Anna did not show any urgency in settling the debt for the trip. Eventually, the affluent Michael overlooked the unpaid amount of $3,000. In New York, the young woman became friends with Rachel Williams, a former photo editor for a fashion magazine. Rachel characterized Anna as demanding and discourteous towards others. Nevertheless, the two women maintained a close and amicable relationship. Anna began sharing her entrepreneurial vision with her friends. She aspired to purchase a historic building on Park Avenue in Manhattan and transform it into an art venue called the Anna Delvey Foundation. In this building, the self-proclaimed heiress envisioned setting up a gallery, retail stores, restaurants, a bar, and a bakery across its 6 floors. Simultaneously, Delvey started employing specialized software to fabricate counterfeit bank statements and other financial documents, ostensibly to substantiate her claim of possessing 60 million euros in Swiss bank accounts. Initially, Delvey secured small loans to sustain her extravagant lifestyle, enlisting the help of various financial advisors. Among them was Joel Cohen, known for his investigative work on the financial machinations of the infamous con artist Jordan Belfort, whose story was depicted in the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. In November 2016, Delvey approached City National Bank to apply for a loan of $22 million. Her rationale for the loan was to fund the renovation of a historic building, collaborating with notable designers and restaurateurs. She mentioned that the funding was necessary as her personal assets were located outside the United States. Delvey submitted counterfeit documents purporting to show her possession of 60 million euros. However, the bank's loan processing hit a snag, and a bank employee, sensing irregularities, requested a statement verifying her foreign assets. Subsequently, the banker received the requested document via email, which was later identified as another fabrication, this time from a person named Peter Henneke. The bank staff found it suspicious that the email originated from a personal account, but Delvey had an explanation. "Peter is our family's financial advisor," she claimed. The bank persisted in scrutinizing Delvey's documents, but a few months later, they denied Anna the loan due to her inability to authenticate the origins of the Swiss funds. Following her rejection from City National Bank, Anna Delvey shifted her focus to Fortress Investment Group for her financial needs. The managing director there harbored doubts about Delvey's loan application, primarily due to discrepancies in her documentation. Anna claimed to be of German origin, yet her passport revealed that Delvey Sorokina was born in Russia, raising red flags. As the director initiated a more thorough examination of Anna's purported assets and expressed an interest in meeting her Swiss bankers in person, Delvey hastily retracted her loan application, aiming to circumvent any deeper scrutiny or investigation into her affairs. Despite facing setbacks in securing loans from 2 major financial institutions, Anna nonetheless succeeded in acquiring loans amounting to $200,000 from various banks. She accomplished this by utilizing forged documents. This significant sum enabled her to maintain a luxurious lifestyle for several months, indulging in the opulence she had been portraying. In January 2017, Anna orchestrated a lavish birthday celebration at a trendy restaurant. Her friends and acquaintances recall that the event was a resounding success. However, a few days subsequent to the party, the staff of the restaurant reached out to those who had attended, seeking contact details for Anna Delvey. The reason for their inquiry was that Anna had left without settling the bill for the extravagant affair. Eventually, she addressed this issue by paying the outstanding amount in cash. On February 18, 2017, Anna Delvey checked into the 11 Howard Hotel, where she quickly made an acquaintance with the administrator, Neff Davis. Anna initiated this friendship by giving Neff a $100 tip in exchange for information about the most upscale restaurant in Soho. Neff observed that other hotel guests generally had an unfavorable view of Anna due to her often rude and tactless behavior, her habit of not expressing gratitude, and her tendency to wander around the hotel in a bathrobe. Despite this, the hotel staff were eager to cater to Delvey, motivated by her reputation for leaving substantial tips. As time progressed, Anna and Neff developed a closer bond, with Neff taking on the role of Anna's personal assistant. Instead of a conventional salary, Delvey compensated her by inviting Neff to dine at posh restaurants, treating her to visits to high-end beauticians, and arranging for luxurious massage sessions. On one occasion, Delvey brought Neff to an exclusive party where the renowned actor Macaulay Culkin was present. On another, they visited a private trainer, Casey Duke, who eventually became part of their social circle. During her stay at the upscale hotel, Anna Delvey indulged in various luxury experiences. She frequented high-end beauty salons where she received eyelash extensions from top specialists, each session costing around $400. Additionally, she shopped for items from luxury brands and regularly dined at expensive restaurants. All these lavish expenditures were charged to her account at the 11 Howard Hotel. 3 weeks into Delvey's stay at the hotel, the management realized that the credit card information she had given at check-in was not valid. The hotel owners demanded that Anna promptly settle a bill of $30,000. By then, Delvey had nearly depleted her funds due to her continuous splurging on pricey food and services. Consequently, her social circle had significantly diminished, leaving her to spend time mainly with her 3 closest friends, Neff, Casey, and Rachel. When queried about her financial situation, Delvey remained tight-lipped. On one occasion, Delvey invited Neff to dine at a restaurant. After their meal, the payment attempted with Delvey's bank card was declined. She then offered the waiter a series of 12 different credit card numbers, but none were accepted. This left Neff with no choice but to cover the $283 bill using her own savings. However, a few days later, Delvey reimbursed Neff for the expense, paying back triple the amount in cash. In April 2017, through the use of falsified documents, Anna Delvey succeeded in securing a loan of $70,000. She promptly used $30,000 of this amount to settle her outstanding bill at the 11 Howard Hotel. The following month, after submitting a counterfeit bank transfer confirmation from Deutsche Bank, Delvey arranged for a charter flight on a business jet to Omaha, Nebraska. Her intention was to attend an annual investors meeting, hoping to meet the renowned billionaire Warren Buffett. Also, in May 2017, Delvey invited a group of her friends, including journalist Rachel Williams, fitness trainer Casey Duke, and a team of videographers, for a trip to Morocco. The purpose of this journey was to film a documentary about the establishment of her philanthropic organization, the Anna Delvey Foundation. For their accommodation, she reserved a luxurious villa in a 5-star hotel complex, costing $7,000 per night, complete with 3 bedrooms, a private pool, and a dedicated personal assistant. Early into their stay, Casey Duke suffered from food poisoning and had to urgently return to America for medical care. A few days thereafter, the hotel staff informed Delvey that they were unable to process payments using her credit card. Anna blamed the staff for incorrectly entering her card information, which led to the immediate firing of a hotel employee for failing to verify the payment data accurately. In a tight spot, Delvey persuaded Rachel Williams to cover the substantial bill of $62,000, an amount that equaled Rachel's yearly income. Rachel also bore the expenses for the flight to Morocco, various purchases made by Anna, and a private excursion to the Majorelle Garden on her credit cards. Delvey assured Rachel she would reimburse these costs later. However, after their return, Anna only paid back $5,000 to Rachel, leaving her friend distressed and forced to borrow money from others to afford her apartment rent in New York. By July 2017, grievances about Anna Delvey had begun to surface, notably from designer Mark Kremers, whom she had contracted a year prior for branding services. Creemers was demanding payment for his work, with his fees totaling $17,000. During this period, Anna was frequently moving between hotels, accruing substantial debts and consistently failing to settle her bills. Eventually, she found herself in a dire financial state and reluctantly sought refuge with her friend Casey. At one point, the two women met in a restaurant to discuss Anna's life and financial predicament. Initially, Anna was evasive in her responses, but the conversation soon led to her breaking down in tears. She claimed that her financial woes would be resolved once she succeeded in acquiring the historic building she had been eyeing. It was at this juncture that Rachel Williams came to the realization that she was unlikely to recover the remaining sum she was owed by Delvey. Prompted by this revelation, Rachel composed a letter to the local prosecutor's office. Within an hour of sending the letter, law enforcement officials contacted her, revealing that they were already conducting a criminal investigation into Anna Sorokina. On October 3, 2017, while undergoing addiction treatment at a rehabilitation center in Los Angeles, Anna Delvey was apprehended and charged with grand larceny and check fraud. By the spring of 2019, the then 28-year-old Anna Delvey faced trial in a case that extended over several months. She was accountable for debts amounting to at least $275,000 to various organizations and individuals. The prosecution in the trial contended that Delvey's criminal activities spanned a period of 10 months, from November 2016 to August 2017. They argued that Anna Sorokina's method of operation involved funding the lavish lifestyles of her friends from the middle class to avoid raising suspicions about her supposed wealth. In contrast, she relied on wealthier acquaintances who were less vigilant about their expenditures to cover her own expenses. In her defense, Sorokina's attorney maintained that his client genuinely believed in her future financial prospects and her ability to eventually repay her debts. He argued that the social milieu surrounding Anna, characterized by arrogance and pretense, with individuals often glorifying their lives on social media, played a significant role in influencing her to engage in fraudulent activities. Anna Delvey displayed an apparent lack of concern regarding her mounting debts and the potential prison sentence she faced. She approached her trial with a unique flair, transforming it into a public spectacle. For each court appearance, she donned attire from the latest designer collections, having enlisted the services of a stylist previously associated with Courtney Love. The stylist's selections were crafted to present Anna in a serious light, while simultaneously garnering sympathy. Throughout the trial, the defendant made appearances in high-end designer clothes, consistently expressing her dissatisfaction with what she perceived as an inadequate level of media coverage of her trial. Despite not viewing herself as a fraudster, Anna Delvey was ultimately convicted. She received a sentence of 4 to 12 years in prison, coupled with a fine of $24,000. In addition to the prison sentence and fine, she was also mandated to compensate the victims with $200,000 in restitution. In a candid interview with journalists, Anna openly admitted that she harbored no regrets about her past actions. She even went as far as to assert that given the opportunity to revisit her choices, she would make the same decisions all over again. In 2019, Rachel Williams, one of Anna's acquaintances, published a book titled My Friend Anna. This book delves into Rachel's personal experiences with the swindler and explores the profound impact that their trip to Morocco had on her life. Even while Anna was incarcerated, her social media accounts remained active. Through her posts, she kept her followers informed about ways to communicate with her and offered instructions for sending her money via cryptocurrency. Inside the prison, Delvey paid meticulous attention to her health and appearance. She committed to sleeping at least 12 hours daily and devoted 9 hours each week to yoga practice. She boasted about her physical changes, claiming to have slimmed down and grown a few centimeters taller. Lacking access to a phone, she spent her time immersed in books. Anna also voiced her dissatisfaction with the prison food, particularly lamenting the absence of fresh greens and broccoli in the menu. Resourcefully, she took to making her own nut milk, cultivating greens, and regularly experimenting with new organic products available in the prison commissary. After serving 4 years in prison, Anna Delvey was released on February 11, 2021. She quickly reverted to her previous extravagant lifestyle, moving into a lavish hotel. This was made possible by the funds she received from Netflix, who had acquired the rights to adapt her story. A portion of this income was allocated towards settling some of Anna's outstanding debts. However, her freedom was short-lived. Just 6 weeks following her conditional release, on March 25, 2021, Anna Delvey was taken into custody by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. She was detained for a period of 18 months due to an expired visa. The decision to detain her was influenced by the immigration judge's assessment that, if released, Delvey would likely revert to her fraudulent behaviors. In February 2022, Netflix launched the series Inventing Anna. The script was penned by Shonda Rhimes, renowned for her creation of the television series Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. Actress Julia Garner portrayed the character of Anna Delvey. It's reported that Sorokina was compensated with a sum of $320,000 by Netflix for the rights to her story. Presently, Anna is confined to house arrest in a New York apartment. She is prohibited from using the internet and rigorously follows this restriction. Delvey regularly contacts her parents by telephone and is permitted to have meetings on Thursdays. She engages in magazine photo shoots and provides interviews. The photo was captured in January 2023. Celebrating her 32nd birthday with flair in her New York dwelling, Sorokina is crafting ambitious plans for the future. Her aspiration is to initiate her own reality show and dreams of hosting Madonna and Elon Musk as guests on her program. In 2013, Jessica Heeringa, a 25-year-old woman, vanished under mysterious circumstances from her job site. The pursuit to find her kidnapper extended over several years, during which time a number of other women suffered harm. When authorities finally captured the culprit by chance, they uncovered deeply disturbing details about him. Jessica Heeringa, born on July 16, 1987, resided in Norton Shores, Michigan. She was raised in a humble family with a sister. At 22, Jessica became a mother to a son she named Zevin, fathered by Dakota Quayle Dyer, her long-term partner. They were still together in 2013, living in a leased home. At 25, Jessica was employed at an Exxon gas station in Norton Shores, situated in a neighborhood near Lake Michigan. Known for her warm and amiable nature as a manager, she was often praised by customers. Eager to provide for her cherished 3-year-old son, she frequently worked extra hours. Jessica's diary reflected her ambitions to advance and learn. She aspired to pursue college studies in accounting, but financial constraints hindered this goal. Dakota was unable to completely support their family, leading to regular disputes and turmoil in their relationship. The couple was engaged, yet their marriage was repeatedly deferred due to various factors. On the evening of April 26, 2013, Jessica Heeringa was fulfilling her regular duties at the Exxon gas station. Her day started as usual, with a visit to a nearby store around 3 p.m. for shopping, followed by a drive to her workplace. She arrived at the gas station around 4:35 p.m., parked her car, and began her night shift, which was supposed to conclude at 11:30 p.m. Jessica was the sole employee on duty that night. At 11:14 p.m., a customer dialed emergency services, reporting his experience at the Exxon station. He had entered the store to pay for his gas in cash, but found it unattended. He informed the 911 dispatcher, "I'm not sure what's going on, but there's no one at the station. The door is open and unlocked. Lights are still on, but there's no one to take my payment. There are just my car and another vehicle outside. Why isn't anyone here? It looks very odd." The police reached the Exxon gas station within 10 minutes of the 911 call. During their inspection of the premises, both inside and outside, they found no evidence of a struggle. Everything seemed orderly. Jessica's coat was in the back room, along with her purse containing $400, car, and house keys. A solitary drop of blood, later identified as Jessica's, was discovered near the storage area's back door. Additionally, a cap from a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol's laser sight and 2 batteries, likely for a watch, were found on the floor. The gas station's cash register remained undisturbed, with all the money intact. The last recorded transaction was at 10:52 p.m. for a lighter. The facility lacked interior surveillance cameras. Positioned next to the cash register was Jessica's pack of cigarettes, suggesting she had briefly left her station with the intention of returning. Her locked car was parked outside, but Jessica was nowhere to be seen. She had inexplicably disappeared. Upon discovering the station unattended, police reached out to the gas station's owner, informing her of the situation. Subsequently, the owner contacted another manager living close by, requesting her to secure the premises. Additionally, the police notified Jessica's family of her disappearance. Her parents, seeking clues to her whereabouts, called her friends. One friend recalled being at the gas station between 8 and 9 p.m. that day, noting that all appeared normal then. Shortly after, a fellow employee arrived to lock up the station. This colleague recounted that around 11 p.m., she and her boyfriend had driven by the station on a motorcycle. They spotted a silver Chrysler Town Country minivan parked near the rear service door, its back door open. Suspecting Jessica might be involved in theft from the station, they paused to observe further developments. The manager observed a young man with disheveled, wavy hair near the minivan, dressed in an orange sweatshirt. She saw him repeatedly open and close the vehicle's rear door before he finally drove off. Police, reviewing surveillance footage from surrounding buildings, located a video showing a silver Chrysler passing the Exxon gas station at 11:02 p.m. A store employee nearby also spoke to the police, mentioning that he had seen the man in the minivan conversing with Jessica. Christian, the employee, initially thought the stranger was merely flirting with Jessica, given her attractiveness. He noted Jessica standing outside while the man questioned why she wasn't inside. Both Christian and Jessica's colleague, who had spotted the man by the minivan, contributed to creating a composite sketch of the unidentified individual. He was depicted as a light-complexioned young male with dark, wavy hair, a stocky build, and approximately 1.82 meters in height. The sketch was released 3 days following Jessica's disappearance. Despite numerous calls received by the police in response, no significant leads emerged from the information provided. The prevalence of the silver Chrysler minivan in the United States posed a considerable obstacle in the investigation. In Michigan, there were approximately 15,000 vehicles of this kind registered. Identifying the specific driver of the minivan linked to Jessica Hiringa's disappearance became a daunting challenge, given the vast number of identical models. Initially, Jessica Hiringa's boyfriend, Dakota Quayle Dyer, was a suspect in her disappearance. He acknowledged their frequent arguments, but denied ever physically harming her. Dakota actively cooperated with the investigation, informing the police that he was at home with their 3-year-old son on the night Jessica vanished. Lacking a car, he couldn't have traveled to her workplace. His phone records, once verified by detectives, confirmed his presence at home that evening, leading to his exclusion from the suspect list. The investigation revealed that Jessica had numerous admirers due to her amiable and outgoing personality, which sometimes led to misunderstandings. One such admirer was Jess Ammerman, a 37-year-old married plumber. He visited Jessica at the gas station around 9:30 p.m. on the day she disappeared, confessing his love and willingness to divorce his wife for her. However, Jessica rebuffed his advances. Jess left the station, called his wife, and they spoke for about 50 minutes before he returned home. Following his interrogation, a polygraph test, and interviewing his wife, Jess Ammerman was also eliminated as a suspect. Rob Fallett, the brother of the Exxon gas station's manager, emerged as the next suspect in the case. He reported visiting the gas station around 9 p.m. on the day of Jessica's disappearance. Upon greeting Jessica, he noticed her seeming downcast. Inquiring about her mood, Jessica confided about having family troubles. Rob suggested she could stay with him, but she declined. After spending a short while at the station and making a purchase, Rob departed for a night fishing trip at the lake. Detectives checked Rob's phone records for that evening, which corroborated his account of leaving the gas station for fishing. Consequently, Rob Fillet was eliminated from the suspect list. Search and rescue operations for Jessica Hiringa were launched with helicopters, expertly trained canines, and extensive searches of residential and commercial properties, wells, woodlands, and Lake Michigan. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no leads were found, leading to an impasse in the case. Nearly a year later, in February 2014, an event in Michigan strikingly similar to Jessica's case occurred. A small, blonde, bespectacled woman was assaulted by a man while returning home late at night. She was kidnapped, taken to his apartment, and attacked. Although he threatened her life, he let her go after several hours. The perpetrator, identified as 42-year-old Brad Allen Mason, was swiftly located but resisted arrest, brandishing a fake firearm at the police, which resulted in his fatal shooting. Mason had a history of criminal activity, including a 2004 kidnapping conviction and a 2011 arrest for indecent exposure. Notably, in 2014, he resided in a dormitory opposite the Exxon gas station where Jessica worked. Nonetheless, investigators found no evidence linking Mason to Jessica's disappearance. 2 years following Jessica Heeringa's disappearance in 2016, another incident involving a young woman occurred. Late at night, returning from a party at a friend's house, she became disoriented in a dark street. A man in a silver minivan approached, inquiring if she was okay and offering a ride, which she refused. However, she asked to use his phone, to which he consented, but only if she entered the minivan. Once inside, the man locked the door, revealed his phone was out of battery, and brandished a gun, instructing her to stay silent. He then began driving. Feeling sick and nauseated, the woman requested him to lower the window. Seizing the opportunity, she leaped out of the moving vehicle through the window and fled to a nearby house. The man sped away. The victim immediately contacted the police and described her kidnapper. Subsequently, through surveillance footage, the police managed to trace the license plate of the silver Chrysler Town & Country and identified the driver as 46-year-old Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey Willis, a factory laborer, led a secluded, modest life and had no prior legal issues. When located and his minivan searched, police found a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol. The gun was traced back to a colleague of Jeffrey's, who reported her laser-sighted gun stolen some time ago. Willis was arrested and detained. A search of his residence uncovered a box filled with various BDSM paraphernalia, including handcuffs, chains, ropes, gags, a vibrator, a video camera, and a bullet matching a Walther P22. The box also contained insulin syringes with an unidentified liquid, sedatives, Viagra, lubricant, disposable gloves, and a diagram of a woman's anatomy with marked injection sites. On his computer, numerous videos depicted appalling kidnapping scenes with young women as victims. A hidden hard drive in a ventilation duct contained footage Willis had recorded of his female neighbors swimming, unbeknownst to them. A folder titled Victims on the computer held 2 subfolders, one named for the missing Jessica Heeringa and another for a murdered woman named Rebecca. Rebecca Bletch, age 36, was tragically murdered on June 29, 2014, roughly a year after Jessica Heeringa vanished, in an area just 20 minutes from where Jessica worked at the Exxon gas station. Rebecca went out for an evening run, but never made it back home. She was found by neighbors lying on the road, with her clothing disheveled, initially leading to the belief that she was struck by a car. Although unconscious, Rebecca still had a pulse when discovered. Emergency services were called, but she succumbed to her injuries before they could save her. Autopsy reports revealed she died from 3 gunshot wounds to her back and head, with multiple bruises on her wrists and legs. At the time of her death, the perpetrator remained at large. However, 2 years after Jeffrey Willis's arrest, evidence linked Rebecca's murder to the pistol found in Willis's minivan. Willis denied his involvement. Prosecutors theorized that Willis had attempted to abduct Rebecca and bring her to his home. When Rebecca resisted, Willis reportedly shot her and fled. Forensic analysis found Rebecca's DNA on a glove recovered from Willis's residence. Jeffrey Willis was convicted for the murder of Rebecca Bletch and received a life sentence. While serving his sentence, he faced additional charges related to the kidnapping of Jessica Heeringa. Willis consistently denied any involvement in Jessica's disappearance. However, a review of his phone records showed that on the night Jessica vanished, he was present at the Exxon gas station where she was last seen. Subsequently, he traveled to his deceased grandfather's house, which was roughly 13 minutes from the station. Upon arrival at the grandfather's residence, police encountered a heavily secured front door. Forcing entry, they discovered an assortment of cleaning products, powders, and bleaches in the basement. The manufacturing dates on these items were marked as early 2013, aligning with the time frame of Jessica's disappearance. Colleagues of Jeffrey Willis reported a notable absence on April 27, 2013, the day following Jessica Heeringa's disappearance. Willis, uncharacteristically, failed to show up for his factory job. When he did return to work a few days later, he had conspicuous deep scratches on his face and hands, raising further suspicions among those who knew him. A woman who had visited the gas station on April 25th, the day before Jessica Heeringa's disappearance, later reached out to the police. She arrived at the station late in the evening and expressed concern to Jessica about being there alone at such a late hour. Jessica acknowledged her concern with a nod, appearing anxious and somewhat scared. At that moment, an unknown man inside the station told the visitor, "Don't worry, she has customers who look after her." Shortly thereafter, he left the premises. The concerned visitor, still worried for Jessica's safety, stayed in her car outside until Jessica finished her shift and headed home. Tragically, Jessica disappeared the following day. In 2016, the witness from the gas station positively identified Jeffrey Willis, recalling seeing him there. Investigators learned that Willis had frequented the Exxon gas station, interacting with Jessica Hieringa on at least 15 occasions. Concurrently, 48-year-old Kevin Bloom, Willis's cousin and a prison guard, was taken into custody. Kevin's inconsistent statements during interrogation eventually led to a confession. He disclosed information about Rebecca Bletch's death that hadn't been publicly known. Kevin also confessed to assisting Jeffrey in concealing Jessica's body. He described how, on April 27th, the day after Jessica's abduction, Jeffrey invited him over for a party at his house. Upon arriving at his late grandfather's residence, Kevin saw Jessica for the first time, lying on the floor, bound and lifeless. The cousins wrapped her body in a sheet, transported it in a car to a forest where Jeffrey had pre-dug a grave, and buried her. They then returned home. When Kevin Bloom led the police to the forest to identify the burial site of Jessica Hieringa's body, he spent a considerable amount of time wandering through the area. Despite his efforts, he was unable to pinpoint the precise location where they had buried the body. The trial of Jeffrey Willis commenced despite Jessica Hieringa's body not being found, either alive or deceased. The prosecution presented substantial evidence to charge Willis with her kidnapping and murder. Their case posited that Willis had been stalking Jessica for an extended period. On the night of April 26, 2013, he allegedly parked his vehicle near the service entrance of the gas station, entered the premises, and struck Jessica on the head with his gun. It was during this assault that the cover of the gun's laser sight reportedly fell off, and Jessica's blood was spilled on the floor. Willis then purportedly dragged Jessica out through the service exit, placed her in the back seat of his car, transported her to his late grandfather's house, and there, engaged in his most horrific acts. A forensic computer analysis of Jeffrey Willis's devices revealed that he stored photographs and news articles about the search for Jessica on his computer, following the investigation's progress. It was discovered that Willis used a password, displayed on the screen, consisting of Jessica's initials and the date April 27, 2013, which is presumed to be the actual date of Jessica's death. She likely died the day after her disappearance. Jeffrey Willis denied his guilt, insisting he was at home on the night of the kidnapping. His lawyers argued that the prosecution had no direct evidence linking him to the case. No DNA belonging to Jessica was found in Willis's house or car. Willis's defense team, learning from Dakota that Jessica had developed a serious substance abuse problem before her disappearance, suggested that her kidnapping might be linked to illegal drug trafficking. Jeffrey Willis was convicted of murdering Jessica Hieringa and received a life sentence without parole. Throughout the trial, he displayed neither remorse nor empathy. His cousin, Kevin Bloom, was found guilty of assisting in the disposal of Jessica's body. Kevin was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 5 years of probation. He also faced suspension from his position in the prison system. The narrative around Jeffrey Willis took another turn a few years after his conviction. He became a suspect in an older, unresolved case. On October 17, 1996, in Fruitport, Michigan, Angela Thornburg, a young woman, was found dead, with her killer never apprehended. Willis, a 1988 graduate from the same high school as Angela, became linked to her 1996 murder. In that year, 28-year-old Willis was a janitor at his alma mater. Concerns arose when the principal noted his excessive time in the computer lab and initiated a check on his computer activities during work. The findings remain undisclosed, but Willis was asked to resign immediately after the review. The ongoing investigation into Angela's murder is shrouded in secrecy. A decade since Jessica Hieringa's disappearance, her remains are still undiscovered. In the wake of this tragedy, a legal battle ensued over the custody of Zevin, her son, between her sister and Dakota, Jessica's partner. Ultimately, Zevin is being raised by Jessica's biological family. Additionally, Jessica's parents have been instrumental in advocating for legislative changes. Their efforts led to the enactment of a law requiring gas stations operating at night to install surveillance cameras, aiming to prevent such incidents in the future.